This week on the Communicators, William Kennard, former FCC Chairman and telecommunications advisor to the Obama campaign. This is the first of two programs looking at the technology and telecommunications plans of the presidential candidates.
Well, for the next 2 weeks on the Communicators, we're going to be looking at how the presidential campaigns approach telecommunications issues. Joining us this week is Bill Kennard, former chief of the FCC and now a telecommunications advisor for the Obama for President campaign. Here to help in the questioning is Amy Schatz of the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Kennard, if I could start, Senator Obama has proposed creating the office of a chief technology advisor or chief technology person for the U.S. government. What would that position entail?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand that Senator Obama really embraces technology. He really gets technology. Anyone who has followed the campaign can see that he has really been able to harness a lot of the power of technology, social networking, the internet, to run a very successful presidential campaign. He wants to import the use of technology to governing. And the notion of a chief technology officer is to have someone close to the president, who reports to the president, who is making sure that the government uses the very best technology in serving the people. So it will involve things like making sure that we open up government, that it's transparent. Senator Obama was the only candidate that called for streaming of the presidential debates in the primary. And so it's that philosophy of making sure that we're using government not only to communicate to government, but also making sure that members of the public can use technology to have input. So a chief technology officer in an Obama administration would make sure that all the federal agencies are consistent in their use of technology, are using the very best practices from industry, and making sure that technology is a tool to make government better.
Amy Schatz.
So what would you say is the centerpiece then of the Obama tech plan? Is it this idea of transparency, or is it broader than that?
Well, it's much broader than that. Transparency is a big part of it, Amy. But it also involves making sure that we are regaining our position again as a world leader in technology. Unfortunately, the last 8 years, the U.S. has fallen behind as a technology leader. We all recall the 90s and how important the internet was to not only our economic growth, but also transforming people's lives in terms of education, in business, and we've lost our lead in technology, and Senator Obama is very much committed to making sure that we regain our prominence in the area. So that means making sure that we're attracting investment for new networks, deploying broadband more ubiquitously, and most importantly, making sure that people who are most at risk of being left off of this technology revolution are connected, particularly people in rural areas in the country.
Mr. Kennard, you talked about broadband. Kevin Martin, the current FCC chair, has proposed a national broadband policy, including government assistance. Does Senator Obama support government assistance when it comes to implementing broadband nationwide?
Yeah, absolutely. There is some government role. Now, it's important to note that Senator Obama embraces private investment in networks, but he also recognizes that there are places in this country that won't be served by state-of-the-art technology like broadband unless government plays some role. And this is not a new novel concept. The reason why everybody in America has access to phone service and electric power is because government, working with industry, made investments in the last century to make sure that these networks, the basic phone network, would be deployed. Senator Obama believes that in order to make sure that people get access to the next generation of technology, next generation internet, broadband, if you will, we have to do the same thing. And that is a stark contrast between Senator Obama's technology plan and Senator McCain's. Senator McCain is not nearly so enthusiastic, in fact, has actually come out against some of the important proposals that Senator Obama has advanced to make sure that all Americans are connected to next generation networks.
Right, but I mean, one of the problems I think that that they're talking about, and one of the problems I think that the McCain campaign has talked about here, is that the fund that would actually be used for, this broadband issue, which the Universal Service Fund, has grown really incredibly big over the last few years, and they've been trying to rein it in. And that's basically the fund that you guys are talking about using to pay for this broadband out in rural areas, right? So how do you do that and not see this fund just explode, and which causes everybody? I mean, this is like 11% of your phone bill every single month. How do you have it pay for this too? And do you lose something, and do you lose phone service, or?
Well, it's a great question, and certainly the Universal Service Fund has grown much bigger in recent years, but there are ways to reform the Universal Service Fund to make it much more efficient. For example, we need to be much more targeted in how those subsidies are used, targeted to the most efficient technologies. In some areas, for example, wireless technology may be the least expensive, most efficient way to get phone service and now broadband out to rural areas. Kevin Martin, the current chair of the FCC, has called for a more efficient use of universal service through auctions, for example. But the answer is not Senator McCain's answer, which is to throw out the universal service program or depart from it and come up with new funding mechanisms when we know universal service funding is tried and true. It's worked for almost 100 years in this country, and it is responsible for bringing basic phone service to many Americans who wouldn't otherwise have it.
So is the idea then that like a Kevin Martin reverse auction idea, is that something that
I think that's the Obama campaign has not formally embraced that. That's one example of universal service reforms that should be looked at and would probably be looked at in an Obama administration.
And another
I called for that as chairman of the FCC.
Well, another thing they're also talking about that may not actually get done before the end of the year when Kevin Martin probably has to leave is this idea of using a future auction to sort of have this national wireless broadband network. Would an Obama administration also like that idea, and would they support that?
Absolutely. If you look at Senator Obama's technology plan, you'll see that he calls for rethinking the way that we allocate spectrum in the country. He understands that the new frontier for broadband is not just cable and telephone service, but also wireless broadband. And so he would like us to think in new ways about how to maximize the use of that spectrum to make sure that people are not going to be left behind.
Speaking of being left behind in broadband, is it a problem that the U.S. broadband speeds are not as fast as some other countries?
That's one of the problems. We should have a national broadband policy in this country, and it should be aspirational. For many years, the FCC defined broadband as 200 kilobits. No one would even think about buying broadband in their home for 200 kilobits. Now, that I understand that the FCC has raised their sights a bit, but not high enough. We should be looking abroad to some of the countries that are leading in broadband deployment, countries in Asia, for example, where most consumers there are used to at least 20 megabits of speed in their homes and in their offices. And we haven't come close to establishing those sorts of broadband speeds as a goal for the country, and we should. And let me just make sure everyone understands what's at stake here. When I talk about broadband, I'm talking about really the next generation of communications networks for the country, which will include networks that people will access not only for high-speed internet access and data, but also increasingly for TV quality video, all of their communications needs, be it local long-distance phones. The broadband pipe streaming into people's homes is going to be a very important platform going forward for not only data but also information and entertainment.
In your view, has private enterprise not kept up?
There is some really good investment in this country going into building out higher speed networks. We're seeing pretty significant investment, for example, in fiber to the home. Verizon in particular has made a huge investment in that area. The cable companies have increased their investment in higher and higher speeds, and that's a good thing. But not everybody has access to those higher speed networks. And the focus of Senator Obama is making sure that we focus on folks most at risk of not having access to these high-speed networks. And it's in those areas where government plays an important role.
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. There's several Democratic members of Congress who have expressed interest in reviving the Fairness Doctrine. Does Senator Obama agree with that?
He doesn't have a position on that as far as I know.
Why?
Why not?
Well, it's not an issue that has been presented recently in legislation, and he hasn't had to address it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it has been, actually. I mean, there's several members of Congress who've talked about it, and this is something that, a lot of conservative talk show hosts talk about this a lot. I mean, this is a real concern by a big chunk of Americans. So, is this something that he's going to address at some point in the future here?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if it's a concern for a big chunk of Americans, but certainly if the opportunity arises for him to address it, I'm sure that he'll evaluate all the facts and circumstances and make a decision. But he has not advanced a position on it to date.
What is your position, your personal position, on the Fairness Doctrine?
Well, my own personal position, again, I'm not speaking on behalf of Senator Obama. My view is that the Fairness Doctrine is an issue that was talked about in an era of a limited number of broadcast licenses in the country. I would really like to think more forward-looking and look at the next generation of networks when we're going to have 500 channels of video communications into the home, and people will access their entertainment over video much like they access information over the internet today. So in that context, the Fairness Doctrine, my personal point of view, is really a little bit antiquated in my mind, and that's my own personal perspective again.
Chairman Kennard, have you discussed with Senator Obama the structure of the FCC and whether or not it needs to be updated?
I have not, no. But Senator Obama has clearly indicated that he wants to change the way decision-making is made in Washington, generally. And this would include all the federal agencies. His view is that government has fallen too much into the grip of special interests. And that's why he has made a point repeatedly of saying, for example, he won't accept money from federal lobbyists or contributions from political action committees. And this goes well beyond the FCC. This is really one of the reasons why I'm so enthusiastic about his candidacy, because having been in government at a relatively high level, I realize how difficult it is to make decisions when you're under so much influence of special interests money in this town. And Senator Obama understands this. I think the American people understand this. They realize that difficult problems in this town are not getting solved, and we have to rethink the way the process of government works. So opening up government using technology is a part of it, but also making sure that the people he brings to government don't have pre-existing allegiances, are in government for the right reason, like he is, to serve and to do the right thing by the American public. And that is really needed and really an exciting prospect.
So, okay, so let's go back to your plan a little bit, which is released in November and it's on BarackObama.com in the issue section. In the Obama plan, it says that as president, he will encourage diversity in the ownership of broadcast media, promote the development of new media outlets for expressive, diverse viewpoints. How would he do that?
Well, first of all, we have to rethink consolidation in these markets. The past 8 years, we have seen literally a rush to consolidate in not only the telecom industry but also in the traditional mass media. And what he's calling for is, let's have a timeout here. Let's make sure that before we rush to approve more mergers, more consolidation, that we understand what is the public interest goal here. And that's why he wrote to Chairman Martin of the FCC opposed to further consolidation in the mass media, because he felt that certain issues like diversity of viewpoints, opportunities for ownership by diverse groups, minorities in particular, were not being discussed and not being focused on.
Right, but I mean, you can't look on some websites now, some of the media websites now, and not see how little consolidation there is right now. I mean, you've got newspapers that are selling for like $1.50 at this point. You can't find buyers for some of these TV stations. I mean, is consolidation really as big an issue, or is the market sort of taking care of that?
Well, you know, that's not really the issue, quite frankly. I mean, people often will focus on the woes that traditional media are facing and say, well, the answer is consolidation. I mean, as an investor in these properties, I know that's not the answer. The answer is making sure that traditional media find new business models and ways that they can offer their content digitally. And, you know, ironically, many of the folks, including Senator McCain, for example, who have promoted more consolidation in mass media, on the one hand, have opposed things like net neutrality, which would make it make it easier for people who have new content to access those digital platforms. And so it's really apples and oranges. Consolidation should not be used as the elixir for the business woes of mass media. In fact, if you talk to many leaders in the newspaper industry or the broadcast industry, they don't see consolidation as the way to solve those business problems.
Does minority ownership of television stations and newspapers, et cetera, media outlets need to be increased in this country?
Absolutely, but that's only part of the discussion. The underrepresentation of minorities in the ownership of traditional media has been a problem for decades. And this is an issue that Senator Obama has focused on. But I think the dialogue has to be broadened because, we have to look to the future of media. And the future of media is not solely going to be about radio and TV stations. It's going to be access to consumers over different kinds of platforms, broadband platforms in particular. That's why it's so important that we have open networks so that folks that have content, be they minorities or anyone, have the comfort knowing that government is going to make sure that they will have access to end users, to consumers. That, in my view, is going to be an important future for minority ownership, making sure that minority entrepreneurs get access to the end users.
So let's talk a little bit about net neutrality then. Can you explain to us what Senator Obama's position is on the issue?
Senator Obama has always been a strong and consistent supporter of net neutrality. Now, you read a lot about net neutrality, and a lot of people try to say it's a real difficult, complicated issue involving lots of technical problems that government should stay away from. It's not that complicated. Net neutrality is the simple principle that people who are using the internet should have access to whatever content is available, and people providing that content should have access to those end users. It's as simple as that. It really comes down to principles that government, in particular the FCC, has dealt with for many, many years, and that's ensuring there's non-discrimination by people who own networks, making sure that they don't discriminate in favor of their own content. And it's a simple principle. Senator Obama believes it should be written into law, that it should be memorialized so that as these broadband networks get built out, the American public has confidence that their government is going to ensure, this is really a free speech issue, will ensure that they will have access to all the content available over the internet.
So let's talk about the legislation then. So there's various bills up on the Hill that I'm assuming will get reintroduced next year because they won't be finished this year. And Republicans are saying that there's really no need for legislation because what the FCC recently did with Comcast, when Comcast was accused of blocking some internet users, that means that we in fact don't need to have legislation because the FCC already has authority. Do you agree that the FCC has authority, or do you think legislation really is required now?
I believe that the FCC has asserted authority. I've read the order recently issued by the FCC involving Comcast, and I'm a former general counsel of the FCC, and it's pretty clear to me that if Comcast or any other party subject to an enforcement order like that sought to appeal it, they would have a very compelling case. And so the problem that we have is that the FCC has made its first tentative steps in this area, but their jurisdictional basis, in my view, is murky. And legislation would certainly clear that up and make it clear to not only network carriers, providers, but also the public that net neutrality is enshrined in law. The FCC has jurisdiction, and it's not going to be subject to years of litigation, because that is the danger that we face now.
This is the Communicators. Bill Kennard is our guest. He's former chairman of the FCC and a telecommunications advisor to Barack Obama. Amy Schatz of the Wall Street Journal is on our panel helping us to question Mr. Kennard. Another issue that this current FCC has faced is the issue of indecency. They've levied a couple fines, been overturned. Does indecency, is the enforcement against indecency in Barack Obama's opinion at the right level?
Well, first of all, Senator Obama cares deeply about this issue. As you know, he has 2 young daughters. He spoke out on this issue back in 2005. And he believes that an important solution to the problem of indecency over the airwaves and on the net is technology tools. Again, this is a guy who really understands technology and realizes that the future is going to demand government embracing technology to give parents and families the tools to protect themselves, as opposed to empowering a government agency with increasing tools to censor content. That's really not going to work going forward. Plus, the indecency regime that we have today only governs a tiny slice of the media world, just the broadcast world. But everyone knows that people are getting content over multiple platforms, whether it's satellite or cable or increasingly over the internet. He would like us to think in a more forward-looking way, to figure out how can we harness technology tools to empower parents to protect themselves.
What are some of these technology tools?
Well, I use some at home myself. I have an 8-year-old son. I use the parental controls on our computer and also on cable. A big part of this is making sure that, one, these tools are available to families, and second, that the industries that distribute this content, the cable networks and the broadcast networks, are educating people on how to use them. And a lot more could be done in that area.
But no further government regulation?
It's not ruled out, but certainly the emphasis needs to shift away from censorship and more toward empowerment using technology tools.
You know, there's a lot of, we've had the V chip out there for a really long time, right? And we've had parental controls in DirecTV or Comcast or whoever. You know, I think one of the big problems, and folks like the PTC will tell you that a lot of folks just don't use those, and they don't know how to use them, or they don't care to use them, and that technology is not really going to get you there, and that if you don't impose big fines on broadcasters, that you're just going to have even more flashes of naughty bits and indecent words sort of spewing out onto the airwaves.
Well, let's not forget that there are serious First Amendment concerns when you try to attack this area solely through enforcement. I agree. The V chip has not realized its full potential, but that's not to say we should give up on the V chip. For example, Senator Obama has called for a reinvigorating the rating system on which the V chip is based. Because many of us watch television, we can't figure out what the rating system stands for. It doesn't make sense. I think the broadcast industry could do a much better job of simplifying the use of those ratings and also making known to parents and families how they can use the rating system better. It's not just broadcasters, it's all the mass media.
A la carte for cable companies, should the government require it?
Senator Obama has not taken a position on that. He's certainly aware of the issue. I'm not sure if it's a presidential issue, but...
well, this FCC has been Kevin Martin has been an advocate of that.
Yes. Senator Obama has not taken a position on a la carte. He is very, very concerned about making sure that there are opportunities for more diverse programming sources over cable. And this is clearly an issue with a la carte. You know, some folks argue that a la carte would discourage investment in new programming sources, particularly minority programming sources. Others dispute that, but this is an issue that, obviously he or whoever he appoints to oversee these issues will have to study the record and make a decision, but he doesn't have a position.
So let's talk about that a little bit then, because clearly it seems like Kevin Martin's going to be leaving sometime this year, maybe next year, depending on how things go. Mm-hmm. What would Senator Obama be looking for in an FCC chairman, and how important is that for him to get someone in there? Because sometimes in the past we've seen it where it's taken a while to get appointments in.
Well, again, Senator Obama really gets technology. It's important to him. Uses it in his personal life quite frequently. Understands the importance of it in the campaign and in governing. And he has surrounded himself with a lot of people who really understand technology and care about it. And so I'm convinced that this is an area of the government that will get a lot of focus and attention. In terms of the type of people that he would want to recruit to the agency, I'm sure he will want to recruit people like himself who are in it for the right reasons, don't have pre-existing allegiances, understand the technology, care about the technology, and are averse to drama. One of the wonderful things about Barack Obama is his management style is such that he instills loyalty among people, and there is not a lot of drama around Barack Obama. And I think that he will recruit people to government who are like himself, and I think that would be a great thing for the country.
One of the well-known Silicon Valley names, Carly Fiorina, is supporting John McCain, very active on the McCain campaign. Who are some of the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs or business people that are supporting Barack Obama?
I really don't want to get into names. I don't like to characterize other people's support, but I will say in general that there is a huge amount of support for Senator Obama in the technology community. And I think the reason for that is really simple and apparent, because people in the high-tech community like change, they like innovation, they like new ideas, and Senator Obama really incorporates all of those things, and he's bringing them to government. It's a big part of the reason he's running for this office. He wants to see change, and people in the tech community know that technology is all about change and innovation, and we need that kind of new energy in government. And that's why I think he has overwhelming support.
Has Senator Obama addressed technology education?
Absolutely. Senator Obama supports the program called the E-Rate, which was written into the 1996 Telecom Act. It is a wonderfully successful program that empowers government to help schools and libraries around the country get access to the internet. This was a program, unfortunately, vigorously opposed by Senator McCain, but notwithstanding that opposition, when he was chairman of the Commerce Committee, the program got off the ground. Senator Obama believes that we should not only embrace the E-Rate, but take it to the next level and make sure that it is being used more broadly for education, and particularly science and technology, because everyone knows that we need to do a much better job in this country educating engineers.
Yeah, but doesn't, granted, but also hasn't E-Rate had terrible problems with corruption and money going places it shouldn't be going, and it seems like one of the things that the McCain camp would say is that the senator has been opposed to E-Rate in the past because of the issues that they've had with the funding and the corruption, and some of the schools may be getting money that they shouldn't be getting money. How do you grow that kind of program and not have those sorts of issues on the side? Is it just really more about enforcement?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't agree with the premise. I understand what they have said, why they opposed it, but I was there. I was chairman of the FCC when this was implemented. Senator McCain was chairman of the Commerce Committee. I believe that the reason that he opposed it is because the telecommunications companies opposed it. And they had an active campaign to kill the E-Rate. And I think that he was doing their bidding for them, quite frankly. Now, there are lots of wonderful government programs in the country, Social Security being one, where there is some modicum of fraud and abuse. But is that a reason to throw out the whole program? Look, this is a program that has, in a short period of time, introduced the internet to 95% of schools and libraries in this country, particularly the most rural, low-income schools in America, allowing those kids access to information and a view into the world they would not otherwise have had. You know, it's time to make sure that we can build on the success of that program for the next generation of students in this country.
Bill Kennard, what is your personal and or working relationship from the past with Senator McCain?
With Senator McCain?
Yes.
Well, I was chairman of the Federal Communications Commission from 1997 to early 2001. Senator McCain was chairman of the Commerce Committee throughout that entire period of time. The Commerce Committee is the principal oversight body in the Senate for the FCC. And so I have a pretty good understanding of his philosophy of governing, particularly in this area. And we have stark philosophical differences. I'll leave it at that.
Bill Kennard, former chairman of the FCC. He is a telecommunications advisor for Senator Obama's presidential campaign. And currently he is the managing director in the Global Telecommunications and Media Group of the Carlyle Group. Thank you for being our guest on Communicators. Amy Schatz, Wall Street Journal, thank you for being here also.
Thanks so much.
Want to let you know that next week we'll be talking with Douglas Holtz-Eakin from the McCain campaign about Senator McCain's approach to telecommunications issues.